So before I became a director of a museum, I was actually a professor of art history for about 15 years. And so I've had a lot of students go through my life, and inevitably the question that they always want to know about when they want to finally know about you is, well, why did you choose a career in art? And I had to really think about it, to be quite honest, because it seemed like I had been involved in the world of art in some fashion for a very, very long time. And then I remembered Miss Pumpkin. She was my first grade teacher. And a particular event that occurred in first grade that kind of changed my life. She asked all of us, how does an elephant eat? And I had seen many episodes of the Flintstones, and so total confidence, I knew the answer to this one. Raise my hand. Little boy. And I said, so it's like a vacuum, they suck it up through their trunk. And I was wrong. And then the little boy who was sitting next to me, I remember him very clearly, blonde, blue-eyed, adorable. He, of course, had been to the San Diego Zoo, and he answered the question correctly. I realized at that point that I was very, very little, and the world was very, very big. And there was a lot that I didn't know. And the best thing that I could do was never to talk again. And I didn't. I stopped talking in school. Now, I was perfectly fine at home. I had rules. I was fine at home, playground, that was okay, brother, sister, all of that was fine, but not at school. Well, that was through first grade. And then we were in second grade. And I thought everything was going fine. I was learning a lot more, obviously getting much smarter, doing quite well in school, just not talking. And it was in second grade at about the same time that I would get called out of class, and I'd be taken to this beautiful, sunny room on the second floor, and I'd be asked to draw pictures. And so I would draw pictures of my family, and then this really wonderful young woman, she would say things like, so, why is your dad so much bigger than your mom? And then I would answer, and she'd say, why is the grass? Because I gave her an exception. I liked her. So I'd talk with her. And she'd say, why was the grass so much greener than the sun? And I would so I'd give her an answer. Well, in my mind, this all indicated that I had special talent. And so I started to create with gusto, right? Because obviously I had special talent. Aquarium gravel was my medium. And I used colored aquarium gravel. You remember, I know. I made whales with yarn around them. They go up in the bathroom. And so, really, quite the creative genius. And so I became a studio art major. And after I graduated, I was 22. I went back home, and I had one of those little heartfelt moments with my mother. And I thanked her for all of her encouragement and all the good things that she had done for me. And I said, I just want to thank you for those special art classes because, they really inspired me. And she looked at me because she's a wonderful mother, and she said, Tim, that was a child psychologist. We were very, very worried about you because you hadn't spoken for over a year. Well, God bless her for never letting me know and letting me believe I had this special talent. But I wanted to tell you this embarrassing and true story because I think it's a really good illustration of how art and life are very much intertwined with one another. If you looked at those little drawings of mine, like that wonderful child psychologist did, you could learn all kinds of things about who I was. You asked me some simple questions, I could start to give you even more detail about my friends, my lives, my hopes, my fears, all the things that really mattered to me. But when I became an art student and I started to go to museums, I stopped thinking about art in those terms, and I started to think about it in other terms. I started to think about genius and profound talent, special gifts, obviously, of which I thought I had one. And my experiences in the museums then became a fulfillment of those very ideas. I would have aesthetic experiences, spiritual moments, quiet reverie in front of these wonderful works of art that were so much bigger and better than I was that they were in another realm of some sort, almost like I went to a church and I had a religious experience there. Now, I think that one of the problems that I have with museums, and I've been going to them for a very long time, all of my life, this is all I've ever done, as I said, I've always been in the arts, is that there's a lack of balance between these two different ideas of art. And I think that a lot of museums are out of balance. And it is one of the things that I would like to try to redress. Now, to help you understand how we got to this particular place, I'm going to have to become a little professorial, so bear with me for just a moment. Just a little bit of background, it's real quick history here. The art museum is a fairly recent phenomenon. There have been museums that go all the way back before the birth of Christ, but art museums really came into their own at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. They were like mushrooms after the rain. They were just popping up everywhere. Wealthy people particularly like to create museums, and particularly in the United States. And they had a very specific idea in mind. They were going to civilize the uncivilized. They were going to take the lower classes, the middle classes, and transform them through the beauty of art into something that was more appropriate for the rest of the world. Now, I know that this sounds a little bit exaggerated, but if you think about it, it's pretty legitimate, because at the same time, the middle class, the lower classes were starting to enjoy leisure time, which they've never really had before, because they were basically work like dogs up until the 19th century, when they started to have just a modicum of rights and some limitations about how much work they had. And they'd have a day off. What were they going to do on their day off? The rich thought, oh my God, they'll have a day off. They'll protest. Oh wait, no, it's occupy. I'm sorry. They might create trouble. They might get drunk. You know, they might rape women and children on the street. They'll behave in inappropriate ways. And then all these immigrants were coming to the United States, making it even worse. And like, they weren't trained at all. So where were they going to be trained? Now, certainly we could trust the church to a certain degree, but the rich always know better than the rest of us. And so they created the museums and put the art in there for these moments of inspiration. And I want to be real careful here, because it sounds like, and I know what I'm doing, denigrating the very institution I work in. And there is a point to all of this, I can assure you. But I've had some of my most profound moments in museums. I absolutely love museums. I'm a true sucker for that experience. And let me just tell you about one of them, and then I'll tell you about another. When I lived in London, when I was about 20 years old, I went into the Mark Rothko room in the Tate, and it transformed my life. I sat there, like I'm sure you were supposed to, quiet, obedient, I've always been very good at that, and admired the work. And the work spoke to me. It came alive. It came off the walls. The colors literally pulsated in that room like a heart that was beating. And I was part of that. And that will stay with me for the rest of my life. I don't want to give up that experience. But when I viewed another work of art, I had a very different reaction. This work of art. This is Renoir's painting, Luncheon of the Boating Party, that's in Washington, D.C. most of the time. It was actually here in Phoenix at the Phoenix Art Museum, traveling about a bit. And this particular painting is also one of my favorites. And when I saw it, I was just really struck. Now, I have to say in part because I absolutely hate Renoir's work. And so for me to have to admit that on the one hand, I absolutely hated Renoir's work, and I saw this and I absolutely loved it. I just thought it was so incredibly alive and beautiful, the way that the sun dappled through this tree and created these lively scenes. Now, you should know that this is actually a restaurant in Paris that had been opened at about this time that this painting was created. These are friends and colleagues of Renoir. And one of the things that this restaurant was noted for was that it mixed the classes. Now, I know that that doesn't seem so unusual to all of us, but actually it still occurs. I had this revelation a little bit when I went to the Biltmore for Thanksgiving, and my family was not particularly happy about it because I didn't go to the traditional family Thanksgiving. I went to the Biltmore, which is all kinds of class implications there. Well, this is a place where it was all mixed up, and people came together, actresses and patrons, and you see them in this. And remember, to be an actress at this time was just about to be a prostitute. So these two people are all together in this scene enjoying themselves. But they weren't enjoying themselves in the Phillips collection. When I looked at this painting in the Phillips collection, I thought it was a firefly, that it was in a jar. It seemed alone. It seemed quiet. It seemed almost dead. all of the fun that they seemed to be having was not being mirrored by the fun or the experience that I was having standing in front of it. And that's what I wanted to change. I wanted to create a better balance for a painting like this. And so when I came to the museum, the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art, I inherited a wonderful building, one that shows art beautifully. It can create that wonderful contemplative experience that I was just talking about. And I think we really had that down. We were pretty good at that. We were good at the silence thing. We were serious. We showed things beautifully. And I really appreciated that. But what I was missing was that other part of life, the other experiences that I wanted to have in front of a work of art like this. And so I envisioned this particular space, Smoke a Lounge. Now, I was very fortunate to be able to work with Janice Leonard on this space, who created this beautiful installation. And in my mind, this space is as much an art exhibition as any other art exhibition that I've ever been in. But you know what the differences are? We get to have this conversation. We get to be here together, enjoying other thoughts at the same time. And I don't know about the rest of you, and I haven't been bored at all tonight, but every so often when there was a pause, I look around the room and I admire the red, the palettes, the light. This is an aesthetic experience for me, and so much more. You, in a sense, are providing the life that this painting has always wanted. And it wanted to be in this space with all of you at this moment shared with me. Thank you very much.